I'm Ashley, 32 years old, living in a studio apartment in Portland that smells like old carpet and the Indian restaurant downstairs. I work as a medical billing specialist, which is just a fancy way of saying I spend 40 hours a week staring at insurance codes and arguing with people on the phone about why their CT scan wasn't covered. It's not the life I imagined when I was 18, standing in my high school gymnasium in my cap and gown, clutching my acceptance letter to NYU. But that's a different story. Or maybe it's the same story. I don't know anymore. The point is, I wasn't expecting much from my 32nd birthday. Maybe a text from my dad, a half-hearted Facebook post from a few old friends, the usual discount birthday drink at the coffee shop near my office where the barista writes "Happy Birthday" on the cup even though she doesn't know my name. What I definitely wasn't expecting was my mother. She showed up at 7:30 on a Tuesday evening, which was already strange because my mother doesn't just show up anywhere. Patricia Dawson plans. She schedules. She sends calendar invites with reminder notifications set for 24 hours, 12 hours, and 2 hours before an event. But there she was, standing in the hallway outside my apartment door, holding a cake carrier with both hands like it contained something precious and fragile. Behind her stood my younger sister Vanessa, 28, with her phone already out, presumably documenting the surprise for her Instagram story. Vanessa documents everything. Last month she posted 17 stories about buying new curtains. Surprise! My mother sang out, her voice hitting that particular pitch that made my shoulders tense up automatically. It's the same voice she used when I was 16, and she surprised me by donating all my childhood books to Goodwill without asking because you're too old for that childish stuff now, Ashley. I stood there in my doorway wearing sweatpants with a hole in the knee and an old community college t-shirt that I sleep in, trying to process what was happening. Mom, what are you? We couldn't let your birthday pass without celebrating. She pushed past me into my apartment, Vanessa trailing behind. I know we haven't seen each other in a while, but family is family, right? A while. That was one way to put it. The last time I'd seen my mother in person was Thanksgiving 2 years ago, when I'd made the mistake of mentioning that I was thinking about going back to school for nursing. She'd spend the entire meal explaining why that was unrealistic at your age, and honestly, Ashley, you're not exactly known for following through on things. I hadn't gone home for Christmas that year, or the year after. Vanessa gave me a quick hug that smelled like expensive perfume and whispered, "Just go with it, okay?" She's been planning this all week. My apartment is small, uncomfortably small for 3 adults, especially when one of them is my mother, who has a way of taking up space that has nothing to do with physical size. She set the cake carrier on my tiny kitchen counter, the only clear surface in a kitchen full of unwashed dishes I'd been meaning to deal with for 3 days. "I made your favorite," she said, lifting the lid with a flourish. Red velvet with cream cheese frosting. The cake was beautiful, I'll give her that. Perfectly frosted, with delicate white roses piped around the edges and "Happy Birthday Ashley" written in elegant script across the top. It looked professional, like something from a bakery, not like the lopsided birthday cakes she used to make when I was a kid. But red velvet wasn't my favorite. It was Vanessa's favorite. My favorite was lemon cake with buttercream frosting, the kind my grandmother used to make before she died when I was 12. My mother knew this, or she should have known this, or maybe she'd just forgotten, which was somehow worse. "It's beautiful," I said, because what else do you say? "You didn't have to do this nonsense. You're my daughter." She pulled out cake plates from my cabinet, I only own 3, and started cutting slices with the confidence of someone who'd never been told she wasn't welcome. "Besides, we need to celebrate. 32. That's a real milestone. You're officially in your 30s now, really settled into adulthood." Vanessa caught my eye and made a subtle face that I think was meant to be sympathetic, but she didn't say anything. Vanessa never said anything when it mattered. "Actually, I've been in my 30s for 2 years, I pointed out, taking the plate my mother handed me. "Well, yes, but now you're properly in them. Past the early phase." She settled onto my couch, the only place to sit besides 2 mismatched bar stools, and crossed her legs. She was wearing cream-colored slacks and a silk blouse, like she'd come from somewhere important. My mother always looked like she'd come from somewhere important. So tell me, honey, how have you been? How's work? I took a bite of cake to buy myself time. It was good. Actually good. Sweet and tangy and rich in a way that almost made me forgive the fact that it was the wrong flavor. Work is fine. Same as always. Medical billing isn't exactly exciting, but it pays the bills. My mother made a non-committal sound that somehow conveyed an entire essay's worth of judgment. And are you seeing anyone? Dating? Not really. Been pretty busy, Ashley. You need to make time for these things. You're not getting any younger, and if you want children someday, I don't want children. Mom, we've talked about this. You say that now. But when you hit 35, your biological clock is going to start screaming. And then you'll regret, can we please not do this? I set my plate down harder than I meant to. A bit of cream cheese frosting splattered onto my coffee table, which was really just a storage ottoman that I'd covered with a throw blanket. It's my birthday. Can we have one conversation that doesn't turn into you telling me everything I'm doing wrong with my life? The silence that followed was thick and uncomfortable. Vanessa stared at her cake like it held the secrets of the universe. My mother's expression went through several rapid changes: surprise, hurt, anger, before settling into something carefully neutral. I'm sorry, she said, in a tone that made it clear she wasn't sorry at all. I'm just trying to show an interest in your life. I'm your mother. I worry about you. You don't worry about me. I stopped myself, took a breath. This was the problem with my mother. She could turn any conversation into a minefield, and I was always the one apologizing for stepping on the mines she'd planted. Never mind. Thank you for the cake. It was a nice surprise. You're welcome. She took a delicate bite of her own slice, then set it down on the arm of the couch, which made me anxious because what if it fell? Actually, there's something else I wanted to talk to you about, since we're all together. And there it was, the real reason for the visit. My mother never did anything without a reason. Okay, I said slowly. It's about Carly. The name hit me like cold water. I hadn't heard anyone in my family say that name in years. Not since Carly Dawson? I asked, even though I knew. Of course I knew. Yes, your cousin Carly. My mother picked up her cake again, examined it like she was checking for flaws. Her mother called me last week. Apparently, Carly has been spreading some very hurtful rumors about our family. My cousin Carly. God, I hadn't thought about her in years. Hadn't let myself think about her, really. We'd been close once, when we were kids. She was a year younger than me, the daughter of my mother's younger sister, Aunt Linda. We spent summers together, had sleepovers, shared secrets the way young girls do. She was creative and funny and sharp in a way that made adults uncomfortable. And then something happened. I was never entirely clear on the details. I was 18 and preparing for college, caught up in my own world. But there was a huge fight at a family gathering, voices raised behind closed doors. And after that, Aunt Linda and Carly just stopped coming around. Family events became smaller, quieter. When I asked about it, my mother would get tight-lipped and say, Linda made her choices, and now she has to live with them. I was so wrapped up in my own life, in graduation and college preparations and my first real boyfriend, that I didn't push. I should have. That's something I'll regret for the rest of my life. I should have asked more questions, should have reached out to Carly directly. But I was 18 and stupid and selfish. And by the time I thought about it, too much time had passed. What kind of rumors? I asked, my voice careful. She's been saying. My mother paused, like the words themselves were distasteful. She's been saying that I stole from her, that I took money that was meant for her college education. The room seemed to tilt slightly. Did you? My mother's eyes went sharp. Ashley Marie Dawson, how can you even ask me that? I'm just asking. I can't believe my own daughter would accuse me of theft. After everything I've done for you. After I drove across town tonight with a birthday cake because I wanted to do something nice for you, Mom. I'm not accusing you of anything. I'm just trying to understand what Carly is saying. Drop your city in the comments. Let's see how far this story travels. What she's saying is lies, my mother said firmly. Malicious lies designed to hurt our family. You know how Carly always was dramatic, attention-seeking. Just like her mother. Vanessa finally spoke up, her voice quiet. What actually happened, though? With the money? My mother turned to her, and for a second, I saw something flicker across her face. Something defensive and almost guilty. But it was gone so fast I might have imagined it. Linda and I had an arrangement, she said. Our mother, your grandmother, left money for both of us when she passed. Linda was going through a rough patch financially, so she asked me to hold on to Carly's college fund until Carly was ready to use it. But then Linda and I had a falling out, and she accused me of all sorts of horrible things. I told her if she was going to treat me like a criminal, she could find another bank. I gave the money back. Every cent. Did you? I asked. What? Did you give it back? Every cent? My mother stood up abruptly. I don't appreciate being interrogated in this manner. I came here to celebrate your birthday, not to defend myself against baseless accusations from a troubled young woman who clearly has issues. She's not troubled, Mom. I stopped. How did I even know what Carly was or wasn't? I hadn't spoken to her in over a decade. For all I knew, my mother was right. Maybe Carly did have issues. Maybe this was all a misunderstanding. But something in my gut said no. Something about the way my mother wouldn't quite meet my eyes. The way her voice got too loud, too defensive. I think we should go, my mother said, looking at Vanessa. I can see we're not wanted here, Mom. That's not, but she was already gathering her purse, her jacket, moving toward the door with Vanessa scrambling to follow. At the threshold, she turned back to me. I hope you enjoy the cake, she said. I spent all afternoon on it. For you. Because despite everything, I love you, Ashley. Even when you break my heart. And then they were gone. And I was alone in my small apartment with 2/3 of a red velvet cake that wasn't even my favorite flavor. And a feeling in my chest like something had cracked open. I didn't eat any more of the cake that night. I just sat on my couch staring at it, thinking about Carly. The next morning, I did something I probably should have done years ago. I searched for Carly on Facebook. There she was. Carly Dawson. Same dark hair, same sharp cheekbones, but older now, obviously. 29, according to her profile. She lived in Seattle, worked as a graphic designer. Her profile picture showed her laughing at something off camera, her head thrown back, genuine joy on her face. I scrolled through her public posts. Pictures of her art. A cat named Peanut. Posts about social justice issues and environmental causes. She seemed good, happy, well-adjusted. Then I found the post from 3 weeks ago. It was long. The kind of post that Facebook collapses with a see more button. The beginning was enough to make my breath catch. I've been debating whether to share this publicly, but I think it's time. 14 years ago, my college fund disappeared. $47,000 that my grandmother left specifically for my education. Money that my Aunt Patricia Dawson promised to hold in trust for me. I clicked see more. The full post was devastating. Carly laid it all out. How her grandmother had left money for both her and my mother's children, meaning me and Vanessa. How after her grandmother died, her mother Linda asked Patricia to manage Carly's portion until Carly was ready for college. How when Carly turned 18 and asked about accessing the fund, Patricia claimed Linda had already withdrawn it all. How Linda swore she hadn't. How the family split into factions. How Carly ended up going to community college and then dropping out because she had to work full-time to support herself. And then, the kicker, I recently received documents from an estate lawyer who was cleaning out old files. Turns out there's a paper trail, bank records, emails. My Aunt Patricia never returned the money to my mother. She used it. She spent $47,000 of my money on. Well, I'm still piecing that together, but it's time for the truth to come out. The post had over 300 comments, a mix of support, skepticism, and people asking for updates. I read it 3 times. Then I read it again. 4700. When had I gone to NYU? Oh right, I hadn't. I'd gone to NYU for exactly 1 semester before my mother sat me down and explained that she couldn't afford it anymore. That there had been unexpected expenses, that I needed to come home and go to community college instead. I'd been devastated. NYU had been my dream school. But she'd seemed so genuinely apologetic, so stressed about money, that I'd felt guilty for even being upset about it. That was fall 2010. The same fall Carly would have been starting college. I sat there on my couch, still in my work clothes even though it was 8:30 at night, staring at my laptop screen until the words blurred. Then I sent Carly a friend request. She accepted within 10 minutes. We didn't message right away. I didn't know what to say. But 2 days later, she sent me a simple message. "Hey Ashley, long time." "Yeah." I typed back. "I saw your post about the money." The three little dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Finally, I probably shouldn't have made it public. My therapist says I'm still learning healthy boundaries, but I'm tired of keeping secrets to protect people who hurt me. "I believe you," I wrote, the dots again. "Then, you do?" "Yeah, I think I need to tell you something. Can we talk?" "Like, on the phone?" "Yes, God, yes. I've wanted to reach out to you for years, but I didn't know if you'd even want to hear from me." We talked that night for 3 hours. She told me everything. I told her about NYU, about my mother's sudden financial difficulties, about how the timing matched up perfectly. We compared notes, pieced together a timeline. It wasn't just the college money. There were other things too. Smaller things that made a pattern when you laid them all out together. The more we talked, the more pieces fell into place. Carly told me about the summer she was 17, how excited she'd been about college applications, how my mother had offered to help her fill out financial aid forms, said she had experience with that kind of thing, how my mother had looked her right in the eye and said, "Don't worry, sweetie, your grandmother made sure you'll be taken care of." She knew the whole time, Carly said, her voice thick with tears. When she was helping me apply to schools, when she was asking me where I wanted to go, what I wanted to study, she already knew she'd spend the money. She watched me plan my entire future around something that didn't exist anymore. I felt sick. I remembered that summer too. I'd been home from my first year of community college, bitter and resentful about having to leave NYU. I'd complained to my mother constantly about how unfair it was, how all my high school friends were having these amazing college experiences while I was stuck at home, and she'd said to me, "At least you got to go to NYU for a semester. Some people never get any opportunities at all." At the time, I thought she was just trying to make me feel better. Now I understood she'd been talking about Carly, justifying it to herself, making herself the victim of circumstances rather than the architect of them. Carly cried at one point. And so did I. "I'm sorry." I kept saying, "I'm so sorry I didn't reach out sooner. I'm sorry I wasn't there." "You were 18, she said. "You were a kid too. This isn't your fault." But it felt like my fault, at least partially. "What happened after?" I asked. "After the fight? Where did you go?" Carly was quiet for a moment. "Mom and I moved into a trailer park outside of Spokane. She was working 2 jobs just to keep us afloat. I worked to retail, fast food, whatever I could get. I did 1 semester at community college, but I couldn't afford to continue. Every time I looked at my classmates, I just thought about how I should have been somewhere else, studying what I actually wanted to study. Not scrambling." "God, Carly. The worst part wasn't even the money," she continued. "It was the silence. How the whole family just closed ranks. Nobody reached out. Nobody asked our side of the story. We were just gone, like we'd never existed, like we didn't matter. I should have called you. I wanted you to. I used to check my phone constantly, hoping you'd text or call or even just send a Facebook message. But after a while, I convinced myself you believed their version, that you thought my mom and I were the problem. I didn't know what to think. Mom made it sound like Aunt Linda had done something unforgivable, and I was so caught up in my own stuff. You were dealing with your own loss," Carly said gently. "NYU was your dream." "Yeah, but it was built on your dream. That's the part I can't get past." We were both quiet for a moment. "Can I ask you something?" Carly said. "Yeah." "When did you figure it out that something was wrong with her?" I thought about that. I think part of me always knew, but I didn't want to know, you know? It's easier to make excuses, to tell yourself that she means well, that she's just stressed, that she's doing her best. I spent my whole life translating her cruelty into something more palatable. Yeah, Carly said softly. I get that. By the end of the call, we had a plan. My mother's birthday was in 3 weeks. She always had a party, always made a big production of it. This year she was turning 60, which meant the party would be especially large. Extended family, friends from her book club, colleagues from the nonprofit where she volunteered. Carly and I spent those 3 weeks preparing. She had the bank documents, the emails, the paper trail that showed exactly where Carly's college fund had gone. We organized it all into a folder, made copies, put together a timeline that even a child could follow, but it was more than just gathering evidence. We needed to understand the full scope of what had happened. Carly drove down to Portland one weekend, and we sat in my apartment going through everything with a fine-tooth comb. Look at this, Carly said, pointing to a bank statement from September 2010. This withdrawal 600. What was that for? I pulled up my old college records, the ones I'd shoved in a box and tried to forget about. That was my housing deposit and first month's rent for the NYU dorms. We found them all. Every withdrawal matched up to something in my college experience. Books, meal plan, a winter coat because you'll need something warm for New York winters, a laptop because you can't get through college without a good computer. She was so generous with my money, Carly said, not quite managing to laugh. God, I feel sick. Don't. You didn't know. She made sure you didn't know. But that was the thing, there had been signs. Small ones. But they were there. I remembered asking my mother once how she was managing to afford NYU. And she'd gotten flustered, changed the subject, said something vague about making it work. I remembered her insisting I not discuss finances with anyone, not even my dad. It's private family business, she'd said. People don't need to know our situation. She'd been so careful, so deliberate. We also practiced what we would say, how we would say it. Carly was nervous. She hadn't seen most of the family in years, wasn't sure how they'd react. But she was also determined. I could hear it in her voice during our nightly phone calls. I'm not doing this for revenge, she told me on one of those calls. I mean, okay, maybe part of me wants her to face consequences. But mostly I just want people to know the truth. I want my mom to know she wasn't crazy or paranoid. I want her voice cracked. I want to stop carrying this alone. I understood that. I'd been carrying things alone for a long time too. 3 days before the party, Vanessa called me. It was late, almost 11 at night, and I almost didn't answer. Are you really bringing Carly to Mom's birthday? She asked without preamble. Yeah. Ashley, please don't. You'll ruin everything. Everything's already ruined, Ness. We just haven't all admitted it yet. What's that supposed to mean? So I told her everything. The college fund, the timeline, the evidence. At first she tried to defend our mother. There has to be an explanation, and Mom wouldn't do that. But as I laid out the facts, piece by piece, her resistance crumbled. Oh my God, she whispered finally. Oh my God, Ashley. My graduate school. Yeah. She told me Grandma had left money for my education, specifically for me. I never questioned it. I just thought. Her voice broke. I thought Grandma wanted to help me. And the whole time it was Carly's money. Some of it, yeah. We think about $20,000 of your $45,000 tuition came from Carly's fund. Vanessa was crying now, really crying. I didn't know. You have to believe me. I didn't know. I know you didn't. What do I do? How do I fix this? You don't. You can't. But you can stand with us on Saturday. You can help make sure the truth comes out. There was a long silence. I'll be there, she said finally. I'll stand with you. The day of the party, Carly drove down from Seattle. She picked me up from my apartment, and we sat in her car for a few minutes before heading to my mother's house. Both of us silent and terrified and determined. Last chance to back out, she said. Not a chance, I replied. My mother's house looked the same as always. Pristine lawn, flower beds with geometrically precise arrangements, a wreath on the front door that matched the season. Everything perfect on the outside. Inside, the party was already in full swing. 30 or 40 people mingling in the living room and kitchen, holding wine glasses, laughing at something someone said. Vanessa was there with her husband Marcus, both of them dressed like they were attending a gallery opening. Aunt Linda was not there. She hadn't been invited to family events in years. My mother spotted me first. "Ashley, you made it!" She came over to give me a hug, and I forced myself to return it. Then she saw Carly behind me, and her face went absolutely still. "What is she doing here?" "She's family," I said simply. "I invited her." "You had no right, actually." "I had every right. It's a family party. Carly is family." People were starting to notice the tension, conversations trailing off as heads turned in our direction. My mother's smile was brittle as glass. "We can discuss this later. Right now I have guests." "No," Carly said, stepping forward. Her voice was steady. "We're going to discuss it now." She pulled out the folder from her bag. "I have something for you, Aunt Patricia. Birthday present. Or maybe it's more of a gift to everyone here." My mother's face had gone pale. "I don't know what you think you're doing, but I'm telling the truth." Finally, Carly opened the folder. 14 years ago, you stole $47,000 from me. Money my grandmother left for my college education. You told my mother you'd returned it, but you never did. And I have proof." The room had gone completely silent now. Someone's wine glass clinked against a table, loud in the quiet. "That's a lie," my mother said, but her voice was thin. "Your mother already had that money." "She spent it on what?" Carly's voice was sharp. "What did my mother spend it on? Her trailer? Her car that barely runs? Her clothes from Goodwill? Where's all that money, Aunt Patricia?" "Because I have bank records that show it went into your account. And I have emails where you told my grandmother you'd keep it safe for me. And I have canceled checks showing withdrawals for exactly $47,000 over the course of 2 years. Want to guess what those dates correspond with?" She pulled out papers, started passing them to people standing nearby. I saw Vanessa take one, her face draining of color as she read. "Ashley started NYU in fall 2010. Carly continued. "The first withdrawal from my college fund was in August 2010. $15,000. Exact amount of one semester's tuition at NYU. My mother's best friend Carol, who I'd known my entire life, looked at the document in her hands and then at my mother. "Patricia? Is this real?" My mother lunged forward like she was going to grab the papers from Carly's hands, but I stepped between them. "It's over, Mom," I said quietly. "This is ridiculous. Those documents are fabricated. She's lying. She's always been troubled." "Stop." My voice came out harder than I'd ever spoken to my mother before. "Just stop. I was there, remember? I was there when you suddenly couldn't afford NYU anymore after one semester. I was there when you cried about unexpected expenses. I believed you. I felt sorry for you. And the whole time, you were spending Carly's college fund on my education. I was helping you. You were helping yourself. You were helping your image as the perfect mother who sends her daughter to a prestigious school. And when one semester ran out, you dropped me like a rock because you couldn't admit what you'd done." "That's not I was going to tell you." My mother's voice was rising, becoming shrill. "You don't understand how hard it was. Your father and I were struggling. I was trying to give you opportunities. I was trying to be a good mother by stealing from your niece." Aunt Carol's voice was quiet but sharp. "It wasn't stealing. I was borrowing it. I was going to pay her back." "When?" Carly demanded. "It's been 14 years. When were you going to pay me back?" My mother's mouth opened and closed. The economy crashed. Things were tight." "You don't understand. The economy crashed in 2008. Someone else pointed out. Uncle Robert, my father's brother. "You took the money in 2010. People were talking now, murmuring to each other, looking at the documents. Someone said, "Patricia, is this true?" Someone else said, "Oh my God." Then Vanessa spoke, her voice cutting through the noise. Mom, you need to stop talking." Everyone turned to look at her. "Vanessa." "Honey," my mother started. "No, stop. Just stop." Vanessa's face was blotchy from crying, but her voice was steady. "I read the documents. It's all there. And you used Carly's money for my graduate school too, didn't you?" My mother's face crumpled. "I was trying to help you girls. You weren't trying to help us. You were trying to make yourself look good. You were trying to be the mother whose daughters went to impressive schools, and you didn't care who you hurt to make that happen." "Vanessa," Please, I'm done, Mom. I'm done making excuses for you. I'm done pretending you're just misunderstood or stressed or doing your best. This isn't doing your best. This is theft. This is cruel. And I'm not going to stand here and defend it. Vanessa walked over to stand next to Carly and me. Marcus followed her, his hand on her back. My mother looked around the room at all the faces staring at her, some shocked, some disgusted, some carefully neutral. Her perfect party, her perfect life, cracking apart in real time. It's complicated, my mother said, her voice rising, desperate. You don't understand. Linda was asking me for money constantly, and I knew she'd just waste it. So you spent it yourself? Carly's laugh was bitter. That's your justification? You stole my future because you didn't trust my mom with money. I was going to pay you back when? It's been 14 years. I didn't have it. Do you think I'm made of money? I was barely getting by. I looked around the room at the expensive furniture, the catered food, the wine that definitely wasn't from Trader Joe's. You remodeled this entire kitchen 3 years ago. You take cruises. You buy designer handbags. Don't stand there and pretend you're struggling. My mother's face had gone red. Splotchy. Get out. Both of you. Get out of my house. We're leaving, Carly said. But we're not done. I've already filed a police report and a civil suit. Whether you pay me back willingly or a court makes you, I'm getting my money back. Plus interest. Plus damages for the education I lost, the opportunities I missed, the years I spent thinking my own mother had betrayed me. You'll never prove it. I already have. My lawyer says it's an open and shut case. Carly tucked the folder back in her bag. Happy birthday, Aunt Patricia. I hope it was worth it. We turned to leave. The crowd parted for us like we were walking through water. At the door, I looked back one more time. My mother was standing in the center of her perfect living room, surrounded by silent guests who were all staring at her with varying expressions of shock and judgment. For the first time in my life, she looked small, old, caught. Vanessa was crying. Marcus's arm around her shoulders. Ashley, my mother called out. Ashley, please. But I was already gone. The fallout was messy. My mother hired a lawyer, but Carly's evidence was overwhelming. Within 6 months, they'd reached a settlement, full repayment of the original $47,000, plus $30,000 in damages, plus Carly's legal fees. My mother had to take out a loan against her house to cover it. But before the settlement came through, there were weeks of my mother's lawyer trying every tactic possible. They claimed the statute of limitations had run out. Carly's lawyer proved otherwise. They claimed Aunt Linda had given verbal permission for Patricia to use the money. Carly's lawyer produced emails showing Linda explicitly telling Patricia not to touch the fund. They tried to paint Carly as vindictive and money-hungry until Carly's lawyer pointed out she'd lived in poverty for over a decade while Patricia remodeled her kitchen and took annual cruises. During those months, my phone rang constantly. My mother, calling from different numbers when I blocked hers. Sometimes she was angry. How dare you side against your own mother? Sometimes she was pleading. Please, Ashley, you have to understand my side. Sometimes she was manipulative. I'm having chest pains from the stress. If something happens to me, it'll be on your conscience. I didn't answer. Carly had warned me this would happen, that my mother would try every trick in her playbook to regain control. She's going to try to make you feel guilty, Carly said. She's going to act like the victim. She's going to tell everyone who'll listen that her daughters abandoned her. Don't fall for it. I didn't. But it was hard. My father called me once, about 3 weeks after the party. We hadn't spoken much since my parents' divorce. When I was 25, he'd remarried and moved to Arizona, started a new life that didn't include much room for me and Vanessa. But apparently my mother had called him, crying, asking him to intervene. I'm not taking sides, he said carefully, but I think there might be more to this story than what you're seeing. Did you know? I asked him. About the money? There was a long pause. I knew your mother was stressed about finances. I knew she was creative about finding solutions. Creative. That's one word for it, Ashley. Your mother loved you, loves you. Everything she did because she wanted to give you opportunities. She stole Dad from her own niece, from a kid who had nothing. And she lied about it for 14 years. That's not love. That's not wanting to give me opportunities. That's narcissism and theft. He sighed. When you get older, you'll understand that things aren't always black and white. No, Dad. Some things really are. This is one of them. We haven't spoken since. The family fractured in new and different ways. Some people believed my mother's increasingly desperate explanations that she'd just borrowed the money temporarily, that she'd fully intended to pay it back, that this was all a misunderstanding blown out of proportion. Others, once they saw the evidence, cut her off entirely. Uncle Robert and Aunt Carol stopped speaking to her. My mother's sister Diane, not Carly's mother, but the middle sister, tried to stay neutral at first but eventually sided with Carly. After my mother tried to convince her to testify that Linda was unstable and not to be trusted with money. She wanted me to lie for her, and Diane told me over coffee one afternoon. She actually thought I would go into a courtroom and commit perjury to save her reputation. That's when I realized this isn't who I thought she was. Or maybe it is, and I've just been making excuses for 40 years. Aunt Linda reached out to me through Carly. We met for lunch in Seattle. I drove up one Saturday, nervous and uncertain about what to say to the woman I'd barely spoken to in over a decade. She hugged me tightly when she saw me. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you for believing her. Thank you for standing with her. I should have done it sooner. You're doing it now. That's what matters." We talked for 3 hours. She told me her side of the story, the years of my mother belittling her, making her feel stupid and irresponsible. How Patricia had always been the successful sister, the one with the nice house and the put-together life, while Linda struggled. How when their mother died and left them each money, Patricia had immediately offered to help Linda manage her portion. "I should have known better," Linda said. "Patricia always had to be in control. But she was my sister, and I wanted to trust her." And then when the money disappeared, when she said I'd already taken it, I started doubting myself, wondering if maybe I had forgotten, or if I'd been more irresponsible than I thought. She made me question my own reality. "That's what she does," I said quietly. "She makes you doubt yourself." "Yeah." Linda looked at me with sad, understanding eyes. "I'm sorry she did that to you too, honey." Vanessa fell somewhere in the middle. She was devastated, angry at our mother, but also struggling with her own guilt. It turned out that Vanessa's graduate school had also been partially funded by Carly's college money, something my mother had never told her. I didn't know. Vanessa told me over coffee one afternoon, her eyes red from crying. "I swear to God, Ashley, I didn't know." "If I'd known it was Carly's money, I know," I said. And I meant it. Vanessa had her flaws, but deliberately stealing from family wasn't one of them. She'd been just as manipulated as the rest of us. "I keep thinking about all the times I complained about my thesis," Vanessa continued. "All the times I was stressed about my research. And Carly was God. She was working at Target and living in a trailer park. And it was because of money that should have been hers. Money that paid for my degree. You didn't know. But I should have asked questions. I should have wondered where the money came from. Mom made sure we didn't ask questions. That was the whole point." Vanessa started seeing a therapist. She offered to pay Carly back for her portion of the stolen money, but Carly refused. "That's not your debt," Carly told her. "You were a victim too, just in a different way." But Vanessa insisted on doing something, so she set up a college fund for Carly's future children if Carly ever had them. It was a small gesture, maybe symbolic more than practical, but it mattered. My mother tried to reach out to me several times in those months. Calls I didn't answer. Emails I deleted unread. A letter that arrived at my apartment that I almost threw away but ended up reading late one night when I couldn't sleep. The letter was 5 pages long, handwritten, my mother's perfect cursive filling every line. It was part justification, part apology, part plea. She explained how stressed she'd been, how badly she'd wanted to give her children opportunities, how she'd convinced herself she'd pay Carly back before anyone noticed. She said she was sorry. She said she loved me. She said she understood if I couldn't forgive her, but she hoped that someday I read it twice, then put it in a drawer. The thing about betrayal is that it's not clean. It's not simple. There's no moment where everything suddenly makes sense, where you process it all and move on. Instead, it sits inside you like a stone, heavy and uncomfortable, and you learn to live with the weight of it. I was angry at my mother. I am still angry at my mother. But I also remember being 7 years old and her staying up all night to finish my volcano project for the science fair. I remember her teaching me to drive, patient through all my mistakes. I remember the way she held me when I came home crying from NYU, how she assured me that everything would be okay, that community college was nothing to be ashamed of. She loved me, in her way. A selfish, conditional, twisted way, but still, she loved me. That doesn't excuse what she did. It doesn't make it okay, but it makes it complicated. Carly and I are close now. We talk several times a week. She used part of the settlement money to go back to school, finish her degree in graphic design. She's doing well, better than well, thriving really, in a way that she maybe couldn't have before, when she was still carrying all that unresolved pain. I'm not glad it happened, she told me once, but I'm glad I finally said something. I spent so many years being afraid of causing trouble, afraid of being the dramatic one, afraid nobody would believe me. And then I finally spoke up, and people did believe me. Not everyone, but enough, and that mattered. As for me, I'm still in my studio apartment, still working medical billing, but I'm also taking night classes nursing, like I'd once mentioned to my mother. It's slow going, and I won't graduate for another 3 years. But I'm doing it. The hardest part was accepting that I'd lost years. Years I could have spent in a career I actually cared about. Years I'd spent making do, settling, telling myself that my dreams didn't matter because life was just about survival. My therapist because yes, I started seeing a therapist to help me work through that. You're not the same person you would have been if you'd finished at NYU, she pointed out. You've grown in ways that loss taught you. That doesn't make what your mother did okay, but it means you don't have to spend the rest of your life mourning a different version of yourself. It helped. Slowly, I started volunteering at a free clinic on weekends, getting patient care experience for my nursing applications. The work was hard, but it reminded me why I'd wanted to be a nurse in the first place, the tangible feeling of helping someone, of making a difference in a moment that mattered. One Saturday, an older woman came in with her granddaughter, maybe 8 years old, who had a bad cough. While I was checking them in, the grandmother mentioned she was raising the kid alone because her daughter had disappeared into addiction. I'm 67 years old, she said, her voice weary but determined. I should be retired, but I'm working 2 jobs and raising a child because she needs me, because she deserves better than what her mother can give her right now. The little girl looked up at her grandmother with such pure trust, such certainty that this woman would take care of her no matter what. And I thought about my mother, about how she'd had that kind of trust from me once, how I'd believed in her, relied on her, shaped my whole sense of self around her approval, and how she'd used that trust to serve herself. Some people sacrifice for their children, others sacrifice their children for themselves. The difference is everything. Sometimes I think about reaching out to my mother, not to forgive her exactly, but to, I don't know, have a conversation, acknowledge that things are complicated, maybe find some kind of peace that isn't quite reconciliation but isn't quite estrangement either. I haven't done it yet. Maybe I will. Maybe I won't. Carly thinks I shouldn't. She hasn't changed, she told me recently. She's just gotten better at playing the victim. She's been telling people you and Vanessa abandoned her, that she made one mistake and her ungrateful daughters threw her away. One mistake, I repeated. Yeah, that's how she's framing it. One mistake that lasted 14 years and destroyed multiple lives. But sure, one mistake. Does it bother you that she's still playing the victim? Carly thought about it. Not as much as it used to. I spent so many years caring desperately about what she thought, what she said, how she portrayed me. Now I mostly just feel tired and relieved that she's not my problem anymore. Do you think she'll ever actually change? No, I think she'll die believing she was wronged, that we were all too harsh on her, that she was just a mother trying her best. It was probably true. My mother's version of reality was so carefully constructed, so reinforced by years of justifications, that I doubted anything could crack it at this point. But here's what I've learned. Family isn't just about blood. It's about who shows up when things are hard. It's about who tells you the truth even when it's painful. It's about who sits with you in the wreckage and helps you sort through the debris. Carly is my family. Vanessa, despite everything, is my family. Even Aunt Linda, who I've gotten to know again over the past year, she's family too, my mother. I'm still figuring that one out. The strangest part is that I still love her. Not in a healthy way, maybe. Not in a way that makes sense. But you can't just turn off 30 plus years of conditioning, of wanting her approval, of remembering the good moments between the bad ones. I remember her teaching me to ride a bike, running alongside me with her hand on the seat until I found my balance. I remember her taking me to the library every week when I was in elementary school, letting me check out as many books as I could carry. I remember her sitting with me in the emergency room when I broke my arm in middle school, holding my hand while they set the bone. Those moments were real. That love in whatever twisted form it took was real, but so was the theft. So was the manipulation. So were the years of gaslighting and guilt trips and emotional manipulation. Both things are true, and I'm learning slowly to hold both truths at the same time without letting either one cancel out the other. Last week was my 33rd birthday. I spent it at a small dinner with Carly, Vanessa and Marcus, and a few friends from work. We went to an Italian restaurant downtown, the kind with checkered tablecloths and candles in wine bottles. The food was mediocre, but the company was good. At the end of the meal, Carly pulled out a cake. Not homemade, she'd bought it from a bakery, but it was lemon cake with buttercream frosting. My favorite. I remembered. She said simply, the candles were those trick ones that keep relighting. And we laughed as I tried to blow them out, again and again, until finally someone just plucked them off the cake and doused them in water. It was a small moment. Nothing dramatic or earth-shattering. Just a birthday cake with the right flavor, shared with people who knew me and liked me anyway. But driving home that night, full of lemon cake and red wine and the warmth of being seen, I thought about my mother showing up at my door last year with that beautiful red velvet cake. How perfect it looked, how wrong it was, and I thought about how sometimes the most loving thing someone can do for you is know which flavor of cake you actually like. How that kind of attention, that kind of care, matters more than all the perfect frosting in the world. My phone buzzed at a red light. A text from Carly. Thanks for coming tonight. Love you, cousin. I texted back. Love you too. And I meant it. God, I meant it. The light turned green. I drove home through the rain-slick streets of Portland, past the brightly lit windows of other people's lives, back to my small apartment that still smells like Indian food and old carpet but is mine. Behind me, somewhere in a house across town, my mother was probably sitting in her perfect living room, drinking wine from a crystal glass, pretending everything was fine. Ahead of me was nursing school. More late nights, more struggles, more uncertainty, but also lemon cake. Phone calls with Carly. Vanessa's slow, painful journey toward her own reckoning with who our mother really is. The possibility of building something new from the rubble of what broke. That's not nothing. That's actually quite a lot. I parked in my usual spot, walked up 3 flights of stairs, let myself into my apartment. The cat from downstairs, Mr. Biggles, who isn't mine but thinks he is, was waiting by my door, meowing expectantly. Hey, buddy, I said, bending down to scratch his ears. Sorry, no treats tonight. I was out. He forgave me immediately, rubbing against my legs, purring like a small motor. Inside, I made tea, sat on my couch, opened my laptop to work on a paper for my anatomy class, and for the first time in a long time, maybe ever, I felt something that might have been peace. Not happiness exactly. Not everything is resolved and perfect. But peace. The kind that comes from finally telling the truth. From finally being seen. From finally understanding that you can't fix some things, but you can survive them. And that surviving them is enough. 33 years old. Living in a tiny apartment in Portland. Working a job that pays the bills. Going to school at night. Eating lemon cake with people who love me enough to remember my favorite flavor. It's not the life I imagined when I was 18, but it's mine. And that birthday cake, the beautiful, wrong one my mother brought to my door, it taught me something important. It taught me the difference between something that looks perfect and something that actually is. Between the performance of love and the practice of it. Between what glitters and what's gold. Sometimes the most horrifying thing that can happen on your birthday isn't a disaster or a tragedy or a dramatic scene. Sometimes it's just seeing clearly, for the first time, what's been in front of you all along, and then choosing, carefully and deliberately, to build something different, something real, something that might not look perfect on Instagram but tastes exactly right when you bite into it. That's the story. That's what happened when my mom surprised me with a birthday cake, and the horrifying part, the really horrifying part, was realizing that for my entire life, I'd been eating the wrong flavor, telling myself it was my favorite, believing that the beautiful frosting meant someone really knew me. But I'm done with that now. Now I know what I like, and I won't settle for anything less.